today? We'll find out in just a moment as they take on SK Gaming. Welcome to Picks and Bans. As a refreshing reminder, yesterday, XL were able to take down Mad Lions in a pretty convincing win. We had the pleasure of casting that game, and I think, in particular, the decisiveness in the early game from XL was about goddamn time. And that's what I want to see again.
A huge amount of that felt like getting this Jace for, well, gone now. I was about to say Jace for video. The fact that you're able to play around him in those early game skirmishes around the mid lane was super important for them, and unfortunately Video not going to get his hands on it, but it's been really interesting to see because Video has only played this twice in his competitive history, has 1 win, 1 loss, but has a 60% ban rate against him at the moment. He seems to just be popping off on this.
I mean, he literally was sniping fools from long range yesterday. Hilly in particular, the recipient of a lot. Xerxes Maokai yesterday, hugely influential as well, so that's been banned away. Vi, Rakan, and Annie denied by XL. And for SK, what are the other options? I think Xayah, Rakan, the Ashe are all champions
Gragas
that
as well.
come to my Gragas. Thank you. I keep forgetting about the Gragas. But I think that Ashe yesterday and the day before has really fallen off in comparison to week 1 priority.
Yeah, definitely. And it feels like it kind of had its moment where, okay, we can go for a lot of push, but I think teams are getting better at finding ways to interact with bot lane and shut this down, whether it be going for aggressive bot laners like the Nautilus and having a lot of teams just go towards things like the Zeri, where it's like, cool, we'll kind of sack the early laning phase, but play heavily for these later stage team fights where we can pop off.
And I mean, that's Zeri. This will be the 3rd time that Patrick has run it this year. 1 win and 1 loss. It has also been a flavor of the week. Zeri Lulu is a combination we've seen several times.
It is something, though, that hasn't found great success. It's sitting at like a 30% win rate at the moment, whereas when you look across to something like the Xayah, 70+. So I think the Xayah has kind of stepped up to be very strong in the meta, especially when you look at very short range dive compositions. She has that ability to pop up in the air, keep herself safe, but let's not talk about safety. Let's go all out with the Draven here.
Exakick locking in the Draven. Just a little bit earlier on Ready Check, I was talking to Treats about who he thought was going to be in this game, what could be a difference maker. He immediately jumped to bot lane. Instantly went Exakick and DOS. These are the 2 kids that are popping off. These are 2 guys that are shining. Exakick has had Draven banned against him several times this split already, and now he's on a champion that really wants to run away with the game.
And it feels like a return to form for SK. They've had a bit of a disappointing week where they haven't been able to pick up a win so far. We've seen things like the Aphelios coming through for Exakick, where they're like, hey, look, we're going to actually try and play up towards Irrelevant, try and have a bit of a different style, you know, to get Xerxes on the Annie moving up there as well. But instead, they're going to go back towards the Draven and go, right, let's go back to basics. Let's go back to made us so strong in winter, playing around Exakick and DOS in the spot lane.
Now, what is DOS going to be running in that support role? He knows he's going into the Zeri Lulu. The Wukong has been locked in, and while I expect that to go into the hands of Xerxes, we have seen a little bit of shenanigans. It's been thrown top lane once or twice. Now we see the Jax is secured, so that will already start to limit some of those options and Ken in the first ban.
And stops the other funky flex we've seen, which is actually Irrelevant taking the Sejuani into the top lane. So at least now you know Irrelevant getting his hands on his big pick. I expect him to have a really strong performance here, and he's been able to get these big leads when left alone in this champion. So it does feel like, hey, put the eggs into the Exakick basket when it comes to Marcoon and Certes, and leave Irrelevant to do his thing in the top side, already banning away some of these counters to the Jax as well. We don't really expect Odoamne to bring out something like a Fiora or anything along those lines. He's going to go back, you imagine, towards those more frontline basic tanks.
That is something that I would anticipate and expect. I think especially when you do look at the likes of what do you want to do to get onto that Draven? What are the options that Certus will be running in that solo lane? We'll find out in a moment or two. But what I do like from SK's combination already, you've got that initiation, you've got some side lane threat, you've got some frontline team fight. So they've already got a fairly well-rounded, like a number of options that these 3 champions can do.
The only thing they need is an aggressive support to go with this now. And that's why the Nautilus ban came through. I thought we'd see it. The other one that I'm looking at is maybe something like a Thresh that can actually play that a little bit more aggressive, but at least you still have that safety and being able to move Exakick around if needs be, especially if Cersei is going for more aggressive style with the Wukong, but actually just going to pair with the Soraka, so kind of letting Exakick just do his thing and play super aggro just as Draven yourself in this lane.
What do you make of this? Soraka, flavor of the week. We're seeing it more and more. It has found some success this weekend. I don't like it when I think it's paired with the Draven, but I can also understand it, especially with the Jax, with the Sedge. You want to draw out those fights too.
I think it does well into the Lulu, because the way it works is like he'll beat shield in a lot of this like rock, paper, scissors kind of scenarios, yeah. But the best way to kind of look at this is instead if you go back as, okay, we get pushed, we outrange, we got this aggressive Draven, and we can also help out this Jax on side lanes as well when push comes to shove. So overall, I get it. It's just it won't be as much of a kill pressure in the lane.
Also remember that Equinox silence is gigantic. We've seen it used to fantastic effect against champions like Zeri, who really needs to use that mobility, those spells. Similarly, if you drop that silence field, the Wukong, the Lulu, hell, the Syndra, if they happen to be in range, it is very influential. I think Dracos said yesterday it's the most OP ability or CC in the game outside of death, and I agree with it. So now the last lock-in is going to be the Akali. Okay, zoom out. How do these two team compositions want to play and win?
So I think a lot of this is going to be a case of having this Akali kind of work as a backline threat alongside the Jax. You've got decent split push as well, because Akali can threaten Syndra underneath towers and later portions of the game. So overall, you've got a ton of options here. You've got decent team fighting here for SK with decent dive, but good front to back at least a little bit if you can get Draven going. But if you actually find Draven falling behind, it's very difficult then for Draven to enact on these fights with strong front line, long range CC coming through from video as well, Cersei being in the mix too. So I think a huge amount of this for SK is going to be trying to play out the map smarter than Excel, whereas Excel kind of running back to what worked from yesterday in these straight up front to back team fights.
And this Syndra lock-in, it's only the second time all year long that Vito has run the pick, but it is his fourth most played champion all time with over 22 games. So that is something that I used to kind of find synonymous with VTO. Yesterday had a very good performance, but I think specifically because we saw the roaming, we saw the movement, a lot of initiation from Xerxes and the rest of the squad. So I want to see if they can find that same success today.
Not the best of matchups for him, I will say. In the mid lane, Akali having that trade makes it a little bit tough for Syndra to interact with her, but I think you do have a very strong pairing when it comes to early skirmishes. You know, having push for Syndra, getting her out of the lane, trying to set up for Xerxes, especially post 6. So I have a feeling that's what a lot of Excel are going to be looking at.
Let's find out if Yuke's going to find out the win in SK versus Excel. I'm going to give a special shout out in a blink or you'll miss it moment. We've got a fan in the audience who says, hey, SK, my dad is your biggest fan. Hey, there we go. So shout out to Reina, who I believe is that young lady's father. I hope I've said that name right, not butchered it. It's great. Every week, I'm going to find a new fan to pick on and just put them on broadcast. I know everybody loves it, don't they, Dagda?
And you're going to know everyone by name by the end of it as well, which is great.
Just I know their dads by name. I don't know who she is, but I know her dad, apparently. So that is very fun. Nevertheless, we are now onto the Rift here. I'll take a look through the masteries or keystones, as it were. Defensive starts on both sides of the Rift. Xerxes on that Wukong, heading into Marcoon's Sejuani. Marcoon's one of the junglers that has had the ability to also really impact the early game a lot. Has been one of the sort of stand-uppers along with the rest of this SK squad. And I want to see whether or not he can find opportunities to get either Certus or Exakick ahead. Both of those champions, once ahead, can snowball the entire game.
I'm kind of curious to see exactly what the game plan is now for SK, because I first thought, okay, X-Kick probably going to be a big focus for them, but when you're playing with the Soraka, it's significantly more difficult to actually try and play around this bottom side of the map. And as well, when you're looking at Certus and Irrelevant, I feel like are going to be the big points in this 1-3-1 split push. I think that's where the main problem is going to be if SK can't really get ahead.
And of course, for Excel, in terms of the lanes, similarly, this kind of feels like it could be a slightly slower laning phase, maybe. In terms of Akali has tools to deal with Syndra. Once, obviously, Certus gets access to that perfect execution, there's more threat for Certus to look for the solo onto VTO. As long as he's got that flash or scatter the weak, has some tools to disengage and deal with it. And then you've also got to factor in the wish, too. So if anybody does go low, potentially slow things down immediately. Some trading there. Top lane as Irrelevant pushes into Sign. This is a matchup we've seen, I think, 3 out of the 4 games we've cast already this weekend. It's definitely a flavor of day 2 and 3.
I want to go back to what you were saying, though, because talking about the Wish, I think it is going to be super important here, especially for people like Certus, because I think the way, if you actually end up in a 5v5 for SK, it feels like it's more of a, okay, can we execute Patrick on the backline with Irrelevant or with Certus? And I think the ability for you to play more aggressive because of that Wish is going to be crucial for SK in trying trying to get as much value as possible from that. So I think this is going to be a real tester for SK if they end up even going into the mid game about how they can actually try and play these fights.
I love the way you say tester, a real tester. But
yeah, it's like
I think
30 train a turd.
All of the fights are going to be that way though, Dagda, because the wild growth is also going to be one of those tools that can help mitigate the explosive damage from Akali, potentially save from a Willing Death. You've got heals and the Wish from DOS. You've got engage and disengage tools. So team fights are going to be very interesting to see how they play out. I want to look at the vision and the objective setup for now, though. Both junglers clearing out their respective jungles. It's been a split map so far as Marcoon's cleared most of this top half and already making his way into Odo's lane. The wave is pushing towards Irrelevant, so some threat here for Odo Sion.
Yeah, I think at the moment, they're not going to be able to get too much there. I feel like it's kind of a case of, yeah, Odo going to be able to stick that ward down, won't be able to crash this wave, and that's why you can immediately see Xerxes moving up here so Odo can actually prevent the freeze that's happening on this top side of the map. But for the moment, Odo's going to be fine, and you can see here Xerxes just here to protect him.
I mean, that Decimating Smash Soul Furnace did a lot of work already. Limits, throws out the Summoner heal, sidestep, spinning axe forward, and forced to flash for his life. 2 sums for 3 in the bottom lane. And DOS with the Soraka showing you can still play aggro even on the healing champs.
Yeah, nice job here, though. You can see how low Marcoon is in the bush, though. Xerxes already getting a couple of whacks on him and now going to steal away a camp as well. So nicely done now by XL on the top side.
Keep in mind, that damage onto Marcoon was because Odo hit him with it. The QW combo. Forced him away from lane. Irrelevant had, what, 2 waves of minions to deal with? So he didn't want to concede any of those, meaning he couldn't really support Marcoon. And now Irrelevant will take a little bit of trade damage back, and ultimately, small advantages there, but a plate secured at 4.5. Draven just doing Draven things, also 10 CSR.
And this is where the ability for the Soraka to poke at the Lulu becomes so crucial. So just being able to get that little bit of extra range, push in, and now Marcoon even setting up in the spot side as well to make sure that you can keep this push going. Certus in trouble, though, very low underneath the tower.
Does he have the Shroud available? I didn't quite see the cooldowns. 3 minions to work with. Cersei at least step forward, potentially threatening the play. While that's going on, Marcoon's making his way down south. So top and bottom lane, pushing towards XL in favor of SK. On the other hand, Vito doing the early game Syndra thing, kind of expected during the laning phase, using that range, using the CC to his advantage, and bullying, he's got himself a 6 CS lead already, and that'll grow just ever so slightly.
Unfortunate there for Video that he just didn't have the mana for Xerxes to set up that dive, so they do end up calling off. Now at the level 6 though, if you manage to poke down Certus that low, maybe you can make something happen, but with the earlier reset from Certus in the mid lane, immediately SK are going to turn over towards this Dragon and set themselves up.
Yeah, of course, Dragon will go the way of SK. Looks to be uncontested for now. We'll see if Xerxes steps towards the pit and will spot it out. Doesn't have backup, doesn't have support. How brave is he feeling? Blast going forward, flash away, and no, I was trying to build it up, I wasn't sure if he's going in.
But the thing is, we know from SK yesterday that them having a lead is actually the scary part of the game, so maybe this is actually good for XL, because what we saw yesterday was that SK, they started off looking absolutely spectacularly against Koi, but they got a bit overeager when it came to the mid-game, then started to teeter off again towards the later point, and gave Koi a lot of these opportunities to come back. So I think coming into this, it's a nice start for SK with the advantages they built on bot side and that Dragon, but now we got to see if they can actually enter into the mid game and be like, cool, we're going to take this significantly slower than we did yesterday.
Just made me nervous, Dagda. You've just, because they had a good early game, they generated a lead, they got a little too hyphy, as the kids say these days, and they're on champions like Jax, Akali, and Draven that have to go forward, that have to play proactive. I mean, it's literally in the DNA of the champs. So we want to see a improvement on yesterday's performance. SK, of course, they lost that game to Koi, whereas XL were able to be victorious in their matchup. But this is a little bit as expected. Level 6s in the mid lane. Both top laners hit level 6 as well, teleporting back to the respective lanes. So playing at somewhat as you would anticipate in this sort of neutralizing compositions.
Yeah, and for SK, it would be really nice if they could pick up that win. Getting to 4 would put them in such a good spot, especially when we look towards back of winter, where that 3 was the magic number to try and force those tiebreakers. So just having that little bit of separation, especially between Fnatic and Heretics at the bottom, would be a really big pickup for SK.
Yeah, I mean, I just talked about it right at the beginning of the show. If SK win this game 5-2, pushes XL down 2-4, and more importantly, if they sap 3-3 as the games play out, the number of scenarios in which you advance does begin to dwindle, and Patrick is being chunked out. Those spinning axes hitting hard, the Equinox silence limiting any of the potential follow-up, but we're still dead even. So Dagda, who do you think is going to concede the first kill here, as it looks like Xerxes is going for an opportunity, but neither of these solo lanes really in a position unless you want to tower dive.
I think it's going to be a tough one to call. I feel like it's going to be the Rift Herald that makes a lot of the damage here. You can already see Xerxes trying to set up for that. You had push in mid, they're getting some vision down. Otto's doing a great job on that top side as well, has about a 15 CS lead for himself, plus having push. So at the moment, Otto controlling top, but it's SK controlling bot lane and already making XL sweat.
I mean, this is 3 plates already by 8 minutes. Taken out, both Patrick and Limit have to recall. Of course, because of the fact that Marcoon was down bottom and either shouting, potentially trying to set up some sort of dive, it allows Xerxes to go for that Herald uncontested. Hasn't been able to pick it up. The patience was reset, so this has gone slow. I didn't quite see how that played out. Now, all of a sudden, SK are on the hunt for first blood. It is around the Herald. Danta, perfectly executed prediction. Unstoppable Onslaught comes forward, and there's no support. Irrelevant couldn't leave lane. And Vito was able to flash himself to safety.
Why'd you have to curse me like that? They was about to get perfect prediction and then it was gone. But, I mean, nice job from Video there, right? Blast Cone into Flash to make sure that he could get that distance, and even the ultimate coming from Otto to make sure that he could keep his mid laner safe. So, nice job. XL should be able to get this. Even with the roam that was coming through from Limit, it was a bit dicey for SK. Honestly, if that fight had kept going, but we may not be done just yet.
Listen, you're still bang on for that prediction. Irrelevant, Certus looking at 2.5 members because VTO's low. He still has access to the unleashed power. Certus dashes backwards, no execution. Xerxes flashes to safety. The power is unleashed. Not going to find the kill. The wish buys time. And SK got the first, and Odo forced to run for his life. DOS jumping in with the long range save.
And that's a massive win for SK because that was 2 versus 3. Look at the bot side here. Already you can see Marcoon was sitting here. They get that bot lane tower. The Rift Tower doesn't go across in response. SK win both sides of the map.
And not only that, the gold lead is gigantic. 3,000 gold in, what, a minute of gameplay? Do I have a button to actually show this? Yes, I do. That is what just happened in the last minute. And even the Whirling Death. Oh! That's so cheeky. Interrupting the back there from VTO. Just being a bully, really, more than anything else. And that's going to be fantastic. The Herald wasn't even taken in all of that.
And that's the thing now. You get this from Marcoon. You've already got the rotation for Exekick towards his top side. He pushes out top lane. Immediately drop Herald if you want to. Get some more plates. And if you actually try and contest this as the bot lane for XL, it's nigh on impossible. You end up looking at potential dives, even with Certus having shove in mid. So SK are running away with this game.
I mean, 1,100 gold up for Exekick Straven. It was that first rotation lock-in. He's got a 20 CS lead, and he's got backup in the top lane. It has allowed Patrick and Limit to farm up this bottom wave uncontested. Certus, no TP. He's going to go try and catch that wave. And as the lane shenanigans are now starting to play out, SK want to use this advantage, use the power of the 10-minute Draven to try take either more plates or maybe even take another tower, and Xerxes obviously here to try to respond.
The problem, though, is because you already have Xerxes sitting up in this top side behind Odo, there's no one to really help out Certus here, so you do get a plate going back in favor of XL, but as you start to see Xerxes move away from this, this is where it can come a little bit more dangerous. You also have Exekick on the furthest point from the map on the Dragon, the spawning, so not being able to use that Herald now puts SK a little bit behind when it comes on rotations to this Dragon, but it looks like they're now going to again swap sides, both sides of the equation. XL sending their bot lane top.
So this game is a little bit more reminiscent of what we saw on day 1 of this week. Slightly slower pace, not as proactive during the early game. And the reason I want to highlight that is in yesterday's win against Mad Lions, XL were able to find kills, were able to find skirmishes, were able to create fights and advantages for their team. They spent no time in a deficit yesterday. They picked up 80% of the Drakes. They had a successful KDA. Unfortunately today, because of the draft and how it's played out, unable to find opportunities, unable to really pick those fights, and the one that has happened, or the Herald rounds 1, 2, and 3, have gone the way of SK Gaming.
The thing is, though, it's not like SK have a substantial enough lead where it's like, okay, they can just auto-win, right? So I think a lot of it is still waiting to see exactly what happens. I think if Exekick ends up cashing in, that's going to be a very different story, sitting there with just 340 stacks. Now the Rift Herald's going down, but at least XL have been doing a decent job of trying to get gold back into the series' hands.
Look at that, more gold secured. DOS stepping forward. I'm waiting for the prison. Certus looking for the flank. 344 stacks for Exekick. Observers, if you are able to highlight the gold when that gets cashed in, please let me know. He's a level 7 versus a level 10 mid laner, and Exekick is daring him to step forward.
I do think, though, that we have to actually watch where XL are positioned on the map, because usually when we end up in this position where one team has the tempo advantage, you want to try and put your AD carry and support on the, if you're behind, in the mid lane. You can then push in mid and make sure that you're constantly keeping control where your support can lean to either side. Because XL have left Patrick and Limit on this top end, it's become a little bit more difficult for them to actually have control over this top side of the map. So now as SK rotate up, they're in a better position where they can now threaten onto the top lane turret. They can also create man advantages where Marcoon coming up. And now as you look, 3 members on the top side, you're just had Limit reset. SK going to see if they can try and make a play.
I really, really love that point, Dagda, because you're highlighting some of the strengths of understanding sort of lane assignments, sort of the macro game. And it's part of the reason why SK are contesting the top of the table teams and XL struggling a little bit. Yes, they've got those 2 wins. They're in a deficit now, and they may need to deal with some level of threats. DOS, Exekick, Marcoon in the river. TP's available for Certus and turret plates. What's it? 2 secured in the mid lane. None in the top lane, and obviously that tower's fallen bottom. But Certus may look to pick up yet another in just a second.
I think the big one, though, is that all those plates essentially have gone to Exekick, apart from Certus here, right? He's just got one for himself. So this Draven is massive. Hasn't reset in a while, though. Still been sitting on just the items that you see on your screen for about the last 6 minutes. So he's going to have a serious amount of gold when he goes back. You can see it there. So we'll be able to finish off this Mythic very quickly and already be snowballing towards something like the Essence Ruler.
Yeah, and of course, Exekick's at nearly 400 stacks. Still their 1,000 gold up, and we're 2.5 minutes from Dragon number 3. With 2 already secured for SK. They're playing the tower game. Can't really get through that wave clear of Syndra. So instead, they're going to stack 4-man on the top. Odo just hit level 11. Teleport's available to him. Marcoon's chucked out the prison. He's got the TP. Odo is here to respond, but they've got the Ghost from Patrick and the Flash from Limits.
I don't think Odo's really going to be punished for this TP, though. If you look at where Irrelevant's on the map, he just reset. So it means you're not really in a position to try and punish this, threaten any damage onto a tier 2. So at least at the moment, you're still getting away with that for XL. I think it's going to be more crucial, though, when we look towards the Dragon in 2 minutes' time, where now you actually have these side laners that can start to punish through the fact that they have advantages in those side lanes.
And what I love is that SK are using all 3 of the lanes. They're moving their strong points around to either secure turret plates, secure the tower itself, or in this case, like the Dragons. They apply enough threat to get the Flash away from Limit. That Lulu is a juicy target in 1.5 minutes as he will be flashless. And it's up to XL to find a way back in. Look, we're at the, 6th game rather, of the spring season. And this is a little bit more reminiscent of what we have seen from XL throughout their 6 respective games. Slower, a little bit less impactful in the early game. I also think it is fair to say their composition needs a little bit of time too.
I would also say, just for SK, this is clearly in response to yesterday, where I was like, lads, we're not throwing this away. We are taking this slow. We are playing through what we are going to do correctly. And thus far, it's been really good. The fact that they're playing through, again, side lanes with Exekick and DOS, making sure that they're always having that super strong side of the map that they can lean to, has been working out well. Now, with Dragon coming up, they rotate Exekick to mid to guarantee mid priority for this. So overall, SK are just playing through Draven so incredibly well right now.
Yeah, and of course that Draven has the Kraken Slayer, is going to be matched by the Shield Bow. Mythic's picked up pretty much across the board, and with 40 seconds to go, a couple of defensive shallow wards from XL. SK trying to shove out the mid wave. They've positioned Exekick to catch it. He's a level up over Patrick as well, and Irrelevant's trying to shove out that bottom lane. So trying to set their objectives. They can take the Herald and then peel down for Drake. I don't know if they're going to be quick enough, but they might try for both.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they try and go for the Dragon. This feels to me like it's a case of, okay, we understand side laning is our biggest priority here, so if we can get these towers down, it'd be great. Irrelevant, going to hop away with the ward. And now, though, with that little bit of time that's bought, there's potential here, honestly, for SK to actually clear out this mid lane and still contest on the bot side. Very little vision, so it would be a little bit scary, but maybe Marcoon wants to try it anyway.
BTO gonna look for the assassinations. Scatter the Weak comes out, doesn't go forward for the unleashed power. DOS still has the ultimate available. Certus is in the top lane. He may need to teleport for the ensuing fight. Mountain Dragon down to half, 4,000 hit points. Certus has completed the TP. Odo's trying to push them away with that Soul Furnace, and Certus hops over the wall. The Whirling Death comes out, and Xerxes smites the Dragon down. Inside the pit, Irrelevant, Marcoon, and Exekick are rolling over XL. Exekick cashes out, flashes away from the pit. The Dragon goes to XL, the gold goes to SK.
That was a 1,500 gold kill for Exekick. That is so much gold into the hands of this Draven. First off, the fact that they managed to even get in there to contest it was impressive enough, but once the rest of XL were kind of stuck in the back of the pit, it was happy days for SK as they're able to take that very easily. If you watch where Marcoon is, the fact that, where Certus is, Certus immediately hops over the wall and puts the threat onto Patrick, making sure that with the whirling death and also the fact you've got this Akali, it's very difficult for Patrick to really be a key factor in this fight. And as well, look at Video, not really in a position to get onto many of these low health bars. Same with Patrick, who's over the wall, and Exakick is having a field day with the Kraken Slayer in this pit.
1,563 gold on the recall. Exakick instantly completed Bloodthirster and picked up another BF sword. Ching, ching, ching. 5,000 gold lead. Yes, they conceded the dragon, but now that Draven is even more powerful for the next fight.
And how do you try and kill him now? Not only does he have the BT, he's got the Soraka there as well, which means he's going to be healing so incredibly far in these fights. You also get that big shield from the Bloodthirster now, which is super important for a lot of the burst damage that's going to come through from Video and Cersei. So really at the moment, Exakick is going to be a problem in these 3v3s, and you've now got Irrelevant, who's Divine Sun to the top side, Akali, who's a big threat as well. It's very hard now for XL.
I think the fact that Odo is a little bit ahead of Irrelevant may actually be somewhat irrelevant because it's only a small lead, but more importantly, there's more things that a Jax can do for you, either on the side lanes or potentially in the fights, especially when you consider if Sion does go all the way forward, he's got to get through the Sedge, he's got to find the Shroud, deal with the silence and the heals for Draven, and they can potentially just squash the two damage deals on the back line.
And eventually there will become a point where you get to level 15, 16, Irrelevant just says, I don't care about Sion.
Yep.
And like, you will be underneath tower, but I'm just going to ignore you and I'm going to hit the tower. And that's where eventually you're going to struggle as XL. So the fact now you've got this easy bridge for Exakick to bring them there, it's going to be quite nice as should be able to just back out of here.
I definitely was a little nervous there as DOS with the cheeky recall after the tower secured. That's the fourth one picked up here for SK. They've got 2 kills. They've got as many dragon kills as they have champion kills. But more importantly for me, Dagdan, you've talked about it quite a bit this 20 minutes of early game. Just how SK have been mobile around the map, how they've utilized the Draven, and also how XL haven't necessarily had the answers. I think specifically looking at how Patrick and Limit would spend a lot of time in that top lane, not as flexible, not as fluid, and unfortunately they just got pushed further and further back.
And you can even see XL are kind of understanding that. The last passage of play, they try and commit 3 members to the bot side. SK go, cool, we'll lose bot, we take your tier 2 mid. Now we're going to take over your jungle on this top side and make sure Certus can continue to push in. So even when XL are trying to commit to these side lanes to try and battle something back, they're just not quite keeping pace with SK.
They're not, and just before this next fight breaks out, I want to bring the standings up again one more time. In the event SK are able to push forward and close this out, they are one step closer to that pool 1, pool 2 seeding. In the race, it's BDS, Vitality, at a potential 4-2 scoreline. If XL find a way to bounce back here, that is going to be a very difficult situation because then teams like Mad Lions, Heretics, Stars, Fnatic, they have to deal with the fact that one of their opponents around them gets further and further away. So if you're looking at teams at the bottom of the table, like Fnatic, they actually want SK to win this game. Keep close touching distance with XL, then hope to pick up more wins in the back half. But it's still very, very close. It's also an uphill battle. 5,500 gold. Baron is now a threat. And while multiple members of XL are trying to, push some vision, challenge to get into the river, Irrelevant is just pushing the side lane. He's taken a CS lead now. He's pushed the wave all the way to tower, and he had TP. So again, SK just playing on multiple lanes more effectively.
And the gold lead that was there for Odo is now teetering off a cliff as well. So this is where you're starting to see those problems creep in. The glaring one is obviously the 3.5k gold lead in that AD carry position. Exakick, we said that we wanted to see him back onto something that could really step up and be a carry. We've seen it now with 40 seconds until Dragon. They're pushing in mid. Pushed in bot. They're starting to move across over towards this dragon and make sure they're able to secure the 3rd one for themselves. And there's not really much that XL can do. Their entire jungle is just controlled by SK right now.
And of course for SK, the bounce back. In comparison to the loss yesterday, where SK did generate the lead against Koi, they were in a controlling position. I would not say it was as commanding as this, but ultimately some of the decision making, some of the skirmishes, not going the way of SK, allowing Koi back into the game, and then Koi really had a pretty dominant end to that matchup. For today, with the Dragon now spawned and alive, using their teleports sporadically. Look, SK gonna commit this time round. Marcoon's thrown out the prison. Smited down BTO, forces out the flash. Here comes Cersei. TP's being channeled as well as 5 members of XL have grouped up in the jungle. Irrelevant, looking for a potential flank. Can look to cut them up. Leap strikes forward, counter strike stuns. The death is whirling. The Surges buys some time and goes golden with SK running for their lives. Blast Cone sends Irrelevant to safety. Patrick is stepping forward, looking for the zaps, looking for the damage. Ultra Shock Laser fired, Cleanse forced out of Kick, and the Equinox not going to be stepped on, so a lot thrown into the choke point, but nobody goes down.
If you can't get on towards the backline properly, there's not really a hope for SK to actually try and win out these fights, unless, as you can see there, they're just kind of kiting backwards, trying to at least get some damage with Draven. But I think they got lucky, honestly, that they still have that Soraka helping to top them up and putting the health bars in their direction. Really good ultimate from Cersei to deny that engage, because that was looking real scary with Irrelevant, but will still be the dragon going over to SK.
And of course, the third item secured for Kick. He's been sitting on an Infinity Edge. Hurricane just secured for Patrick. One dragon away from that Mountain Soul. And I actually think the Mountain Soul could be really problematic. It makes VTO's life so much more difficult. And of course, Patrick on that Zeri, yes, needs a lot of time to burn through, but the additional resistances, however slight, still going to make the relatively limited damage profiles here just a little bit harder, more difficult to execute.
Yeah, I think the big one is it's more of a case of XL need to be able to absorb that immediate impact from SK, bounce back, and then turn the fight around. Right. So a Mountain Dragon is going to help just with that initial impact SK have, because it can absorb more of the damage and more of the issues that XL are throwing at them and stay in the fight longer. But if XL actually manage to get a couple of these Mountain Dragons for themselves, you might as well say goodnight. Like, there's no way that SK have the damage profile themselves to actually become a major threat.
And we just saw that exemplified in the previous fight, right? VTO was jumped on, was able to get in range of the rest of his squad, and once XL were able to group up as 5, they were able to hold off SK. This is where we stand, this is where we fight, this is where we hold them. And they tried to pull their best Leonidas. They'll need to keep that channeling going. They want to face off once again. 5 versus 5 in this middle lane. Outer tower still standing. Scatter the Weak has been fired. VTO, level 15 for now, looking for the high quality gameplay button. Press R, try blow somebody up, but he needs to be in range to do so.
At the moment, though, there's not a huge amount that SK can really push forward on now. So they need to start moving Irrelevant and Certus to side lanes, but they know they're at a TP disadvantage, which is why we're seeing a lot of the A-ramming happening at the moment. Once these TPs start to crest back up, that's when we'll actually see them move off into the side lanes once more and try and create these isolated pockets where instead of going for the full-on brawl in those team fights, you're having, you know, the 3-man Marcoon, Kick, DOS train, try and find these quick picks onto people like Patrick and find those moments to get the kills.
Well, what about one of the other objectives here? The previous Dragon was uncontested, but with Baron being up, and honestly, both teams have shown a fair amount of interest, not only in the river, but in the vision around Baron. Look, again, trying to challenge, clearing out those wards, trying to push their own vision forward. Teleports are on cooldown for 3 of the 4 members, but that could be one of the objectives where XL could pull members of SK towards them, but they need to make sure that if they do that, and for the peel in the fight, they cannot allow Certus and SK to find that quick kill, because that's when they get swarmed.
Yeah, the biggest problem that we're actually going to be looking at is the fact that you can't really be in a position where if you don't have your ward coverage up far enough, it's going to be very difficult for Certus to really be in a position to push in on topside, right? And that's why there's a lot of battling. It is vision for Baron, yes, but it's also vision for control over those side lanes, so you can push up in mid. And as long as you end up in a 4v4, even as XL, you're in a really, really good spot. So that's why SK at the moment are actually struggling a bit to get control, but they really just need to send Irrelevant to the bot lane, draw Omni away, set Certus into that top lane, and try and match your mid and top wave, so you can actually then move in as a 4-man unit to get the vision. And we kind of get to see it a little bit here, where they got some control at the moment.
And of course, they can do that now because the teleports are back available. I think for the last couple of minutes, neither TP for Irrelevant or Certus was up and usable, and it has just popped up. So it's going to be SK stepping into the pit. They've started this one. They're still on top of plenty of vision. Long range engage here from XL. Not going to be likely. Down to 3,000. Ultra Shock Laser fired out. Secured. XL want to try win the fight. Certus wants to chase down Patrick. Ghost and Flash available to him. Exit kick is
not here.
Through Odo. Certus is trying to look for the back end as once again. DOS split out from the fight. Now Certus left alone with 5 members of XL. It's going to be jumped on and likely taken down. Perfect execution backwards. Forced to hop over the wall, and does so, escapes with his life. That was beautiful. Eventually throwing down the flash too.
Brilliant call from SK. They get the recall on XL. They immediately start up that Baron with all the damage that's coming through from Irrelevant to notice that Kraken Slayer and Exit Kick. They're able to burn it down so fast. And though Certus looked like he's in trouble, he actually buys a good amount of time for Irrelevant. They'll push in mid. Then you're able to get the resets for Exit Kick. So he's now coming back onto the map just in time for this Dragon as well. So getting their waves prep for Dragon. Really nice job there by SK.
I mean, it just feels like SK have got a stranglehold on all of the decisions. Their mobility in the pit was great. The way they split up. Certus, even if he had gone down, it still would have been a worthwhile trade. But he doesn't. He escapes, costs him only the flash. And with Dragon spawning in 20 seconds, now XL are on the face, or like potentially at risk of losing the soul as well as the Baron. Teleport being channeled. Certus looking for limit. He flashes over the wall. Glacial Prison holds him in place, but there's no one to follow up. SK were not necessarily grouped for the full-on fights.
And now you got to back away. Limit has no flash, no heal, no ultimate. A lot of those safety tools for people like Patrick in these fights now gone out the window. Marcoon, the big engage tool, also doesn't have his, but without their support, XL don't want to try and contest, and that's Mountain Soul to SK.
Really, really nicely done. I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but as the resident old man on the broadcast, the way SK are playing reminds me a little bit of G2 Aero and Sven and Mithy were around. They generate a lead in the bottom lane, they'd be moved around the map and strangle just the life out of the opposition. They were called boring, they were not the most exciting team to watch, but there was beauty in the decision making, and that's kind of what I'm seeing here from SK.
I agree. There's some times where they blunder kind of in the mid game with how they set up their side lanes, but right now this is looking great and a big difference from their average 14 kills that they have at the moment in the LEC.
Average of 14 kills. We're at 2 for both teams at 30 minutes, and 5 dragons have been murdered. Irrelevant's got that teleport available to him, so he was pushing in the mid lane. While the rest of SK shoving in bottom. There's still 30 seconds on this Baron-empowered siege. XL, you have to do something. XL, you have to start a fight. XL, you have to look to create an opportunity. Well, they are just going to get bullied to oblivion. The inhibitor's falling in the middle lane. They're down so far in gold, so far in level, so far in damage. It's such a difficult task. But they've now lost another objective, and SK can group up for another inhib turret.
The Baron buff is about to wear off though, so this will give it a little bit of reprise for XL, but look at the big wave that's in top. SK can even go and match that if they want to. Now you've got minions on the Nexus turrets and they're going.
Right, no Baron buff means now is the time to fight. Whirling Death out, Exit Kick not able to find limit. He's able to run for his life. Stand aside, the Equinox is gigantic! It's a double kill for Certus, another for Irrelevant. Odo and Limit are running for their lives. This will be the 4th for SK at the cost of nothing. All 5 members of SK inside the base of XL. They will take down the Nexus turrets. It took 30 minutes for 2 kills. It took 30 seconds for 4 kills. And SK take down XL.
Slow and steady, SK will close out the game and get themselves the 4 wins on the board. Beautiful stuff by them. Definitely a massive difference from what we saw from them yesterday, but well worthwhile and setting them up fantastic now, as you say, to make sure they can get into that group stage.
I mean, really, really good position. 4 wins is crucial when you do think about making it to the bracket stage, the best ofs. More importantly for me, you can see Swiffer on stage. The interview that he had with Frankie a little bit earlier, talking about that loss, talking about the mentality. This SK was focused, was determined, very clear in their game plan. Hard to find those faults that we saw in yesterday's game against Koi that cost them.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that they actually were able to play out through a 1-3-1 composition, which I think a lot of teams in LEC have really struggled to play, it was really, really good. Good understanding of how they want to set up vision, play around them. Particularly, we saw them, battling back and forth over that control on the top side around that Baron pit. So overall, great stuff from SK, and it's nice to see them not only have X-Kick pop off and something like Draven, but having the solo laner as well, understanding how to play out the map rather than just going for team.